Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming out on your Saturday mornings, getting out of bed and come and join us for our thyroid and weight loss seminar today. It is so great seeing all these new faces in the crowd. My name's Amy, and I've been the one emailing you guys back and forth all week long. So it's really nice to finally put, some faces to these names. This morning I have the extreme pleasure of introducing a very dear person to me. Dr. Briegel has been my chiropractor since the day I was born. Yeah. He's also been my nutrition coach for about the past 2 to 3 years. But more importantly, Dr. Briegel is my dad. Yeah. I'm nervous. I had this down, but okay. So Dr. Briegel has been in practice for over 33 years now, and he's been helping thousands of people over the years. Okay. He's a trained expert in nutrition. He's an amazing chiropractor, and along with helping thousands of people, he's helped me. A little backstory on myself, being a chiropractic kid, I grew up, not really in the medical field, okay? I didn't have vaccinations. I didn't have shots. Didn't take medicine. A little funny story on that. In high school, I would have a headache or something, and my friends would be like, oh, well, do you want some Advil? And I'd say no, I'm okay, I'll just drink some water, I'll be fine. But this one day, I remember I was in psychology, sitting in class, and I had one of those killer headaches. You know what I'm talking about when you're just like, oh, just turn off the lights, I want to go back to sleep. I was having one of those. And so my girlfriend was just like, oh, well, hey, I have some ibuprofen in my purse. And I just sat back and I'm like, you have an IV in your purse? I was just like, girl, no. Of course, back then I didn't know what ibuprofen was. But clearly it's not an IV. But so, that just goes to show you, I grew up without the medicine, okay? But in high school, my health kind of started to decline. Didn't really know what was going on with me, but when I was 17, I was sitting in class and I could barely take notes, could barely write. I had to quit cheerleading, couldn't do those activities that I loved. My joints were so inflamed to the point that I felt like an 80-year-old woman with rheumatoid arthritis. At 17, guys. I didn't know what was going on with me, okay? I was in pain. I was waking up in the morning with my hips hurting. Like, what the heck? I'm a teenager. And so, I come to my dad, and, I'm just crying, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't want to live like this. Help me. Well, guys, I'm 24 years old, standing in front of you today. I don't have that issue anymore. With Dr. Briegel's coaching, my life was changed. I wake up in the morning, my hips don't hurt anymore. I'm wearing these blue heels right now. I'm fine, okay? So, right, he really tremendously helped me. And so by that, without a doubt, I can tell you that he's going to help you guys too. So all of you guys are here today because you've either been diagnosed with thyroid, have some thyroid issues, or even, saw our ad on Facebook and was like, oh, well, I can't sleep, or, oh, well, I'm having this and this and this. Or you just have some weight loss resistant issues and you're really not sure why. And so, Dr. Briegel, he's going to be able to help you guys. He really is. And so what you're going to learn today, it's going to change your life. All right, it's going to be something that you guys haven't heard before. So what I ask for you guys to do today is just to take a few minutes, take a deep breath, and just shut down. I want you to turn off those lies you've been hearing over the years. Everything that's been on the radio, everything that's on TV, and even medical doctors. Sorry, Dr. Parker, but just take a few minutes and just turn off those lies that you've been hearing. Okay, because clearly you guys are here today because you need help, and you haven't received that yet. And so I want to applaud you guys. To take the first step to getting well, you got to take that step, and you're here today because you're ready. Okay, you guys want to get those answers. You want to get better. You don't want to continue living your life like this anymore. And so Dr. Briegel is going to help you today. All right, so let's just take a few minutes, shut down everything. Dr. Briegel is about to come up here, and he's ready. Okay, he is eager, and he is 100% committed to you guys in getting you well. And the question is, are you? All right, let's give Dr. Briegel a warm welcome.
thank you. Well, I think we let this go too long. Let's see if it'll...
Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Well, after an introduction like that, I'm ready to just call it a day. I mean, that was wonderful. What a blessing. And yeah, so she is my daughter, and which I'm extremely proud of. And I'm so happy to see all of you here today. It's a Saturday, like she said, and it's gloomy, a little cloudy outside, and you're all dressed the way I would like to be dressed. It's Saturday after all. But what we're going to talk about today is important. Okay, it's important. And I commend you all for showing up. It's just like Amy said, if you don't show up, that's the first step. So you have to show up. So I would like to ask, just so I can get a feel for the crowd, I would like to ask how many of you have unresolved symptoms? A couple of people. How many of you have symptoms that you've gone to the doctor and you've had blood work done and the blood work is normal? Anybody like that? Okay. And how many people have just feel that their problem is not going to, you just don't feel you found a solution to your problem yet? Anybody feel like that? Okay. And how many people, regardless of what I ask, won't raise your hand? Okay. A couple of you. Okay, well good. Well, how about this? How many of you have trouble sleeping? Maybe you wake up in the night, you have restful sleep, or maybe you wake up in the morning and you just feel like you need to keep sleeping. You're just not resting. Okay, a number of people. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. So for those of you who raised your hand, I want you to know, just like Amy said, that there is hope, that I have answers that you've never gotten before. I think you'll be impressed with what we're going to do today. Now, along with the general reasons why you're here, let me just ask you this question. If you are looking for the solution in the wrong place, how long is it going to take you to find it?
Never.
Always.
Never. Yeah, you'll never find it. Okay. So we're going to start looking in different areas than have been looked at before. We're going to explore different aspects. Now, generally, I know why you're all here today. Okay, we've just discussed that, but I really want to know why you came here today. What do you hope to get out of today? I want you to dig deep. I don't want you to just say, well, because I want to feel better. Okay, I really want to know. I don't want you to say, well, I came for the cute pictures. Okay, I really want to know why you're here today. So can anybody tell me why you're here today? Maybe with whatever's going on, how is that disrupting your life? How is it disrupting your relationship with your spouse or your kids or your parents? Or maybe at your job at work. How many people can tell me, somebody tell me why you're here today?
Two things: weight loss resistance and achiness in my joints.
Okay. And so the weight loss resistance, obviously, you know, anybody who has weight issues where you've tried to lose weight and you can't lose weight, that can be quite upsetting. So, in fact, let me write this down here. Oops. Weight loss resistance. Okay. Anybody else have a reason why you're here today?
She also said achy joints.
And achy joints.
I'm stressed.
Stressed. Because you had to get up and talk this
I
morning.
know. Had to get up on my day off and come here.
Okay, stress, achy joints. Anybody else? I think there's an E in there.
That's right, yeah.
Lou, I have two grown children who live away from here, both of whom have thyroid issues, both of whom have been in traditional treatment and have not symptomatically improved. I just talked to my daughter who lives in Virginia yesterday. She's been on thyroid medication now for years. The tests have always been normal. She continues to feel fatigued and have challenges with her weight. So she's seeking, non-traditional information, and so I'm just interested in what you have to say because it's going on in my family right now.
Well, excellent. That's very powerful. It's now just a couple things that you said in there.
Fatigue.
I'm sorry.
Fatigue.
Fatigue. Yeah. That's how many people can relate to that?
Probably everybody.
Fatigue. Okay. Yeah. So, and how many people can just relate to what he mentioned about how you feel, that you've had these unresolved things and you've gone through all the traditional methods? Okay, absolutely. So we're going to explore some things. We're going to see if we can find some things. So it's important that you're here. Okay, I get why you're here. But let me tell you why I'm here. Okay, we've already joked a little bit about Saturday morning. I don't have to be here on Saturday. There's plenty of other things that I could do. But let me tell you something. Like Amy said, I've been in practice since 1981. And in 1999, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. It was cancer of her tongue, and it spread into the mouth, and nobody could understand because she didn't smoke. I mean, all the reasons why people would get cancer in the tongue and mouth. She didn't do any of that. She didn't smoke. She wasn't around smokers. She wasn't in a family environment that smoked. The most we ever came in contact with smoking was, for those of you who are old enough to remember, you'd go to a restaurant and you'd have, would you like smoking or non-smoking section. That was the most exposure she'd ever had to smoke in her life. And yet she had cancer in her tongue. Now, her wishes, she didn't want to go through the normal medical channels. And Dad and I both supported her in that. And being involved in nutrition and chiropractic for as long as I had and helped thousands of people, of course, I wanted to help my mom. I was convinced I could help her. And I did everything in my power. I took her to all kinds of other natural healthcare providers. We just did everything, absolutely everything. She maintained where she was, but she never got better. And then my dad had his 75th birthday. And the whole family came in to celebrate his birthday. And they found out at that time that Mom had cancer. And just like me, they wanted to do everything possible to help her to survive. But of course, they were just sold into the, I can't believe you haven't gone through the medical route. So Mom says to me, she says, what am I to do? She was more concerned about the family staying together than she was about her own life. She knew that Dad and I would understand. She says, what am I to do? So she submitted to all the medical stuff. She had radiation therapy, chemotherapy, and within 2 months, her health had drastically declined from where it was. She had a feeding tube put in at this point in time, and doctors love to do tests and they look at the blood work. And on this one time, the doctor discovered that her sodium level was a little bit low. And so he explained and prescribed, if you will, to Mom and Dad to put 2 tablespoons of salt into her feeding tube, which they complied with the next day. It was Saturday morning. And within a half an hour, Dad calls me and he says something's wrong with Mom. And so I just ran out of the office, drove up to Jasper, and when I got there, Mom was in a full-blown seizure. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen or witnessed anybody in a seizure, but it's it's can be very unsettling to watch that. Most severe seizures are 15, maybe 20 minutes long. 12 hours. She was in a full-blown seizure for 12 hours. When she came out of that, she had severe brain damage. I lost my mom that day. She was still with us for another 7 months, and she passed in February of 2001. And I've learned things today that I didn't know back then. And I am firmly convinced that if I knew then what I know now, I would have been able to help her. I'm certain that we wouldn't have lost her when we did, and I'm certain that we wouldn't have lost her to that particular cancer. Whether she'd be alive today or not, I don't know. But I do know that she wouldn't have passed like she did, in my consideration, way too early. So I'm here today because I don't want any of you to have to experience what my mother and I experienced and my father, with her situation. I don't want any of you to experience what she experienced in your later years of life. So I'm committed to helping you. I'm committed to making a change, to helping you to make a change in your lives. Now, the one thing is that as strongly committed as I am, we don't accept all patients. And there's a reason that we can't accept all patients. One of the things is an interesting thing about 3% and 97%. And at 3% of the population, they are, and I should tell you one other thing, looking at from a statistical standpoint, that if you listen to everything I say today, you're going to retain 30% of it. If I ask you to repeat anything and you repeat it, you're going to retain up to 50%. If you write things down, you're going to retain 90%. So I'm going to suggest and recommend, you've got a packet of some information there, you can write on it, take notes with it. There's some things that will help you to, as we go along, that you can make notes on those pictures and diagrams. So anyway, I'm going to suggest you do that. But 3% of the population, basically, let me see here. Every time I pick this up, I hit this button here. Keep going back to, I guess he likes to be present. Okay, so 3% of the population versus 97%. The 3% are people who survive, like survive cancer. They succeed in things that they do. They are people who change the world. Okay? They don't listen to the reasons, C-H-A-N-G-E. I'm a great speller, by the way. They don't listen to the reasons why they can't do things. Okay? They just get out and do it. The other 97%, they listen to all the reasons that they can't do it, and they actually blame everybody else and everything for the circumstances in life. They blame, their circumstances. Let's see, sir. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have somebody else come up here and write for me. Sir, how do you spell circumstances?
All right, Dr. Lewis.
Okay, so I guess I am a doctor. I can't write worth a darn. So circumstances. They blame their circumstances. They blame other people. They blame their parents. Their age.
Government.
They blame their genes. They just blame everything why they can't be successful. So that's good right there. So my question is, thank you, how many of you want to be a 3%er? Okay, good. For anybody that didn't raise your hand, that's okay. I mean, if you would like to leave now, you won't offend me, because I can only help the 3%ers. So the fact that you all want to be a 3%er is great, okay? It's worthwhile that you showed up here on Saturday morning. So, yeah, 3%ers. To be a 3%er, boom, we need to jump into that. So, let's go ahead and see what we've got to find today. Thyroid issues. It's a massive pandemic, okay? It's a massive pandemic. Look at the numbers in just the US alone. 27 million Americans have thyroid conditions. However, only half of those are diagnosed, okay? This means that 50% have symptoms and do not know what is wrong. You know, typically go to the doctor, get blood work, and blood work is normal, okay? A leading thyroid doctor, Dr. Broda Barnes, who's a medical doctor at the Broda Barnes Institute, says 90% of Americans, both men and women, over the age of 40 have suboptimal thyroid function. Whoa, 90%. Anybody in here younger than 40? A couple people, okay? So 90% of everybody else that didn't raise your hand just now, you've got a thyroid issue, okay? Thyroid conditions are the #1 endocrine disorder in the US, with 27 million affected compared to diabetes, which is 16 million, okay? Everybody knows somebody who has diabetes, okay? So 80% of all the thyroid conditions are in women, okay? 80% of those have hypothyroidism, and 80% are autoimmune. Most people don't associate autoimmune with thyroid conditions. Autoimmune is another whole thing in and of itself, okay? There's over 200 diseases like diabetes and so forth that are associated with autoimmune. They're considered autoimmune diseases today. And it's growing on a daily basis. They're finding something and adding to that. Almost to the point where you think that all diseases are going to be autoimmune. Now, is this the solution? To take pills? Okay. It's not the solution. You know, people that have been taking pills for forever and you still have symptoms, you still have these problems. So let's start to look at some of the truth. Now here's the thing, okay? Dr. Parker is here today, a medical doctor, and you heard what he said. He's been in the field, he's been in the profession for years, but his daughters still have these symptoms of thyroid, okay? And so I don't care what kind of a doctor, even me, you know, we don't all necessarily have all the answers. But what I do have is that along with all of my experience and knowledge, I am networking. I'm in a group of doctors throughout the country that do this kind of work. So we have the support of one another. And we have taken care of thousands of people with hundreds of different conditions and helped them immensely. So here's the one thing that we want to look at right here. Excessive thyroid hormone replacement carries the potential for serious long-term metabolic complications. They just give an example of accelerated osteoporosis. So taking the medications, as we all know that taking drugs of any kind, in order to be classified and labeled as a drug, there's toxic side effects. Okay? This is just one of the things that they found with excessive hormone therapy replacement. So there's a lot of collateral damage, okay? Thyroid disease predisposes you to many other degenerative diseases, even if you're not taking medication, okay? It's kind of a spiraling downward movement. You could have obesity and weight gain. We've talked about that. You have a 2 times likelihood of having a blocked aorta or to have a heart attack, okay? Because you have a thyroid condition, it doubles your possibility of having a heart attack. 50% of all depression can be caused by an undiagnosed thyroid condition. How many people are taking Paxil and all these other different antidepressants when it could simply be fixing their thyroid? Autoimmune types such as Hashimoto's can lead to psychosis, seizures, dementia, and mood changes. Hashimoto's is a form of thyroid condition. It's an autoimmune response. And there's other hormone problems, especially during perimenopause and menopause. You know, Time magazine's, anybody seen the new Time magazine out that just came out, I guess, yesterday or within the last day or two? Has a picture of a guy, he's, of all things, naked from the waist up, and it, on the big label, says menopause. It's menopause. So forget, get perimeni and menopause, it's menopause. So, could this be your problem, okay? Look at some of these symptoms. You could have weight gain despite diet or exercise, sleep problems and or fatigue, hot flashes, cold hands, feet, or just cold in general. Depression, thinning of the hair and outer 1/3 of the eyebrows, brain fog, you know, you just can't think quite clearly. Dry skin and or thin brittle nails, infertility, constipation. It just goes on and on and on. So are you cold intolerant? Are you losing your hair? So what's the solution? Well, it should be simple. Get rid of the cause. Okay, what's the cause?
Thyroid's not working right.
It depends on who you ask. Okay, what is the cause? I got ahead of myself here. Genetics? How many have heard that, well, it's in my genes? Mom had it, dad had it, so therefore, what do you expect? I'm going to get it too. Or, like Sheila said, just getting old. Okay? One of the things, speaking of Sheila, we have a great support team here. Okay, I would like to just go ahead and take a moment to acknowledge them. You've already met Amy, but also Dr. Lori, my better half. She's been practicing with me for the 33 years. And also Amber. Okay. And Sheila. Sheila's been with us for over 17 years. But just, you know, you heard Amy say something. Sheila, do you mind just saying something real quick? I'm going to ask you to come up here.
You're going to ask me to come up there?
Yes, I am. Because we can see you on this recording, hopefully.
Okay. I'm a crier. Yeah, Dr. Blue asked me to, you know, just kind of give a little bit of my story. It's not anything huge and shocking, but probably the biggest thing is through my 20s, I was probably the most unhealthiest I'd ever been. And I had gallbladder issues, I had digestion issues. I mean, I just thought, I'm in my 20s and why aren't things changing? How come I'm getting sick so young? And anyway, Dr. Briegel, I actually became a patient here. And then he started working with me nutritionally. Before I knew it, this was my passion. I had to work here. And so I've been here for 17 years, and through Dr. Briegel's coaching and helping me nutritionally, I'm 50, and I've never felt better in my entire life. And who would think? You know, people think, you know, you get older and these things just come along with age, and now I know for sure age is nothing but a number. It's just a number. He gave me hope, and Dr. Briegel can definitely give you hope.
Thank you. So I think you can see that we're all committed to helping. You've got a team. It's a team effort. You know, we're here for you to do whatever is necessary to help things change for you. So you're 50? Wow. That's amazing. She doesn't look 50, does she? No. Okay, or the lack of hormones. Okay, that's what they say. You need to take all kinds of hormones, like male hormones, female hormones, just, they're all over the place. You know, they say, well, that's what your problem is. You want to stay younger, maybe HGH. You know, we've all heard all these things. The truth is, there is a cause, and when you remove it, the body can heal itself. See, the interesting thing is that when God put us together and we were born, You know, we started with one cell which divided into two and just kept multiplying, and we ended up 9 months later coming out with heart cells different than lung cells, different than brain cells, kidney cells, bone cells, skin cells. They're all different. So there's something in the body, there's something, I don't care whether you believe in God or think of it as a universal intelligence, there's some kind of intelligence, obviously, that has something to do, because we cannot duplicate that process in the laboratory. Okay? So here's the truth, your body is a self-healing organism. If it's not healing, there's a reason why it's not healing. There's something causing interference in the ability for it to heal. And that's what we're going to look at today. So let's look real briefly at how it all works. Okay? Starting at the top, you don't have to try to draw this right now, we'll do it a little bit later. But the hypothalamus is where it starts. It releases thyroid releasing hormone, as it's called. It drops it to the pituitary gland, which releases TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, thyrotropin, and then that goes down to the thyroid gland, which makes T3 or T4. Okay? So, let's take a look at this process here. And this is in your notes, so you can fill this out. So, we have the hypothalamus at the top, and like I said, that produces TRH, thyroid releasing hormone, which goes down into the pituitary gland, which stimulates the pituitary gland to release thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. Okay? And then from there, the thyroid gland produces T4 and T3. And it's important to understand it produces those two, and it's also important to understand that T4 is 93% of what's produced, and T3 is 7% of what's produced. It's also important to understand that 99% of the T4 and the T3 are bound to a protein. Because if it's not bound to the protein, the body can't pick it up, assimilate it, and utilize it properly. It can't get into the cell to do what it needs to do. Okay? So, 99% is bound to a protein. And then from there, it goes into the liver. Well, the other thing I should tell you is that T3 is the active form, which means it's ready and can be utilized immediately. T4 is an inactive form. Okay, and what needs to happen is that the T4 goes into the liver, where the liver converts the T4 into what they call free T3, or FT3. Okay, so it's making it functional. Now it's active. Okay, it's the active form of T3. Now from there, 60% of that goes to every single cell in the body so that we can utilize it. Another 20% is converted to reverse T3, RT3. And this is important. It's also an inactive form. And 20% converts to T3S or T3AC. Okay, and the most important thing to understand about that is that the T3S and the T3AC goes into the intestinal tract, where it's converted in the intestinal tract to T3.
I'm sorry, what is
Free
RT3 again?
RT3 is reverse T3. Okay? So yeah, so in the intestinal tract, the T3S and the T3AC, which isn't important that you know that, you just need to get the concept down, that you have 20% of what's converted in the liver needs to go into the intestinal tract so it can be converted into free T3. So it's floating around, it's able to be functional. Okay? So there's a number of processes to take place. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So the question I have is if the, let me see if I can get back to here for a minute. The question I have is if the pituitary gland is functioning properly and it's producing TSH, and you've got TSH dumped into your system, which goes into the thyroid gland, then we know that that's fine. That's working. But what happens in the thyroid gland if the thyroid gland isn't working and it's not producing the T4 or T3. Then we have a problem in the thyroid gland. Make sense? What happens if after all of this is produced in the thyroid gland, the thyroid gland is working properly, okay, and then the T4, which is 90%, 97%, no, what is it? 93%. So I'm not good with math either. I can't write, I can't math. So 93% is of T4. What happens if it's not converted in the liver, so we don't get this? Is the problem in the thyroid gland, or is the problem in the liver? It's in the liver, okay? We need to do appropriate testing to find out what the problem is. Does that make sense? Absolutely. So here we go, and it converts in the intestinal tract the 20% into free T3. So we have free T3 being produced in the liver and also in the intestinal tract. So, thyroid madness. That's how I like to call this, okay? It's time to stop the thyroid madness. It's time to start looking at the truth. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to treat your thyroid problem. I'm not going to suggest that I can cure you with your thyroid problem. What I can promise you is that I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you things that people are afraid to tell you, things that people won't tell you. And I can help you. If you do the things that we outlined today, I promise you that your life and your health will be better. I promise you that. So let's look at the truth. We have to look at myths. Okay, thyroid replacement hormones such as Synthroid or Levoxyl and others are your only answer. Have doctors ever suggested that there's anything else? They give you thyroid hormones. All these thyroid hormones are T4. Okay? So let's look. When you go to the doctor and they do blood work, if all they're looking to see is how much T4 you have in your system, okay, and you don't have enough T4, so they give you thyroid replacement hormone, which is T4, what if the problem's in your liver and you're not converting that? So it doesn't matter how much medication. How many people take or know of people that take thyroid replacement hormone, but you still have a problem? Okay? I'm guessing you probably can figure it out. You don't have to be a doctor. Why is that? Probably because it's not in your thyroid. That's not the problem. Okay? Busted. Okay. 80% of the time, the thyroid hormone does nothing to relieve your symptoms and obviously does not fix your condition. 80% of hypothyroid is autoimmune related, such as Hashimoto's, and it will not respond to synthetic thyroid hormones. The majority of all the people with thyroid problems, it's not even going to respond to the thyroid hormones that you're taking. Is it any wonder why people aren't getting their life back, their health back? Most doctors do not check for autoimmune disease for the thyroid because their treatment is the same. If you don't do the proper testing, you're never going to find the solution because you won't find out what the problem is. How can you treat something if you don't know what the problem is? You don't know where to go. Oh, here's one. Happens all the time. Well, your blood work is fine and so are you. Okay? Doctors are so convinced of looking at the numbers. And if the numbers match up, they say you're fine. Now, we all know people that have gone in for a physical, they get a complete physical, get a clean bill of health, and they've had a massive coronary the next day. We know of somebody like that. Yeah. And so what are they looking at? They're looking at something different than the patient. Somebody said it was somewhere in the 70s, it kind of transitioned, is that doctors used to take care of patients with symptoms. Today, doctors take care of symptoms that happen to be attached to a patient. Okay? We don't take care of symptoms here. We take care of, I don't even call you patients. We take care of people. Okay? We help people. So busted. Okay, by the time your blood work shows a positive test, you have most likely been having symptoms for 10 to 20 years. 10 to 20 years you've been having these symptoms. What's going on? What's going on? And you hear, for some reason, you think maybe it's your thyroid. You go into the doctor's office and you have blood work. I think it's my thyroid, doc. They do the blood work, and guess what? It's normal, and so therefore you are. Remember, 50% of the 27 million people who have thyroid condition, it's not even diagnosed. Okay. Most doctors evaluate your condition solely on what's considered the gold standard, which is the TSH. Now remember, TSH comes out of the pituitary gland, it goes into the thyroid to cause the thyroid to produce the T4 and the T3. Now, understand that if all they're testing for is the TSH, let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever had a problem with your car? Okay, everybody gonna raise your hand? Okay, good. And you take the car into the mechanic, and the mechanic checks it out, and he comes back and says, you know, Don. You know, Don, you have plenty of gas in the tank, there's not a problem with your car. Well, it doesn't run, you know. Don't you expect the mechanic to turn it on, make sure it cranks in the ignition and it works and the pistons are working, all that kind of stuff? But the mechanic comes back and says, Don, you've got plenty of gas in the tank. You've got plenty of thyroid stimulating hormone in your system. You've got plenty of gas in there. Yeah, but why do I feel like this? You think it's time to find a new mechanic? Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, here's an interesting thing. There's been no studies ever published demonstrating that you have a healthy thyroid function when your TSH is within normal range. Absolutely no scientific studies. And yet, that's what they base whether they're going to give you synthetic thyroid hormone on or not. They use non-optimal ranges. Okay, in other words, here's one. How many people know what your blood pressure should be? What? Somebody tell me.
120 over 80.
120 over 80. And if it's 135 over 88, what do they say?
You're within a range.
Hypertensive.
Well, pre-hypertensive is your 120 over 80 anymore. They've changed that.
What?
So you're hypertensive if you're over 120. Okay? And what do they want to do? They want to put you on drugs. How many people know of anybody that was put on high blood pressure medicine and got off of it? Okay? Very few. Very few people that actually happens to. Okay? So they're looking at non-optimal ranges. What do I mean by that? Well, published studies say that the thyroid stimulating hormone values greater than 2 can indicate health problems, even autoimmune thyroiditis. Okay? So, and what is considered normal? It's 0.5 to 5.5. Now, I might not be good at math, but I'm good enough to understand that that's 3.5 higher than what the studies show is really normal. Okay? So all the time they're looking at these studies and they're saying, well, you're fine, you're normal. Okay. T3 cannot get its message in the cell due to blunted hormone receptors or hormone resistance. You know, somebody mentioned weight loss resistance. Well, there's hormone resistance. Well, what do we mean by this? Okay? This is important because T3 needs to get into the cells in order for the cells to function properly with that. So, this is what we're going to do here. Hopefully I can draw better than I can write. So, we have got a cell. And a cell is a lipid bilayer. In other words, there's 2 layers of fat. That's the membranes, okay? Cell membranes is 2 layers of fat. And along with this, all over, we have these little receptors, okay? All over the place we have these little receptors. And these little receptors basically accept nutrients and hormones into your system. So it could be vitamins, it could be minerals, could be amino acids, it could be hormones like insulin, it could be things like T3, okay? So we've got these receptors along there, and it's kind of like if I were to come to your house and ring the doorbell, what would you do?
Answer the door.
Go answer the door. Okay, and you may invite me in or you may not, okay? It's your choice. Now, what happens if I came and rang the doorbell and you came and answered the door and it was discovered that I was at the wrong house, I needed to go next door, okay? You're probably not gonna let me in. You're gonna tell me where I can go, okay? So the same thing. Or what if you happen to live in maybe a duplex? Okay, so there's two families, if you will. Maybe it's a mother-in-law suite, but there's two families in the same building, okay? And so I come to the one door and find out, no, I need to go to this other door in order to come into the house. So it's the same type of thing. When you have certain things, nutrients come up to and ring the doorbell, if you will, and it's going to say, okay, vitamins, come on in. You can enter. So the whole mechanics of the cell is to accept and allow nutrients and hormones into the cell and also waste products out of the cell. This is normal. This is how the cells function, okay? And in the process of that, when the nutrients and everything comes into the cell, it creates energy. We all know we need energy. And with the energy, it can create all kinds of other things. And so that's basically generally how the cell works. Now we talked about the hormone receptors may be blunted. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, if there's something that comes along and causes the receptor for T3 to kind of get blunted, okay, or maybe shortened or something like that, it's maybe not receptive enough to allow the T3 into the cell. And so therefore the cell can't do what it needs to do with the thyroid hormone. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to come back to this a little bit later because the cell is important. In fact, this is so important that if you don't get anything else out of the talk, but you understand this, you are way ahead of the game. Way ahead of the game. T4 might not be converting to active T3, which makes your blood work seem normal. Okay, we've already talked about that. Stress produces reverse T3 and will block T3 receptors. And that's known as reverse T3 dominance. Whoa, that's an interesting thing. Stress. Anybody here have any stress in their life? Okay, so stressed you can't even raise your arm. Okay? Yeah, we all have stress. If you have stress that you're living under, it produces reverse T3. Now what the heck's reverse T3? Everybody put your right hand up, spread your fingers out. Put your left hand up, spread your fingers out. Now the right hand I'm going to say is normal, because I'm right-handed and I think lefties are strange. But the right hand is normal, and if you take like this, that's a mirror image. Okay, so we have T3 and we have reverse T3. Now here's the interesting thing, is that when reverse T3, I'm going to put reverse T3 right here, put an R in front of the T3. So when reverse T3 comes up to the portal to let you in, it opens the door because you ring the doorbell, but guess what? I'm not going to let you in. I don't like you in here. But what happens is it blocks the port. It blocks the portal. So when you're under a lot of stress, your body's actually producing more reverse T3 than you're actually getting regular T3. And so who do you think is going to win when the T3 and the reverse T3 is all coming out to the cell at the same time? It blocks it. It's super big problem. So it's important to know that all of our clinics, you know, some of the testing we do is we evaluate 2 untypical blood tests that can determine if this is a problem. Reverse T3 and also serum selenium, because serum selenium is needed and necessary for the absorption and production of T3. So, here's another myth. The thyroid gland is the only problem. We talked about that a little bit already. Okay, contrary to what anybody believes, your thyroid works in synergy with the adrenal glands, the pituitary, pancreas, and yes, even the liver in a huge way. How many people have heard of leaky gut? It's kind of a weird sounding thing. Basically is when your gut, okay, your intestinal tract is designed to absorb nutrients, okay? They have to be broken down properly, digested properly, and be absorbed. There's also stuff in your gut that's not been broken down properly. So leaky gut is where, without getting into all the mechanics, it's where the intestinal tract is actually absorbing pieces or particles of food that haven't been properly broken down. So now you've got stuff floating around in the system that the body can't utilize as nutrients, which stimulates the body to think, your immune system to think, this is bad, this shouldn't be in here. You know, if you get a cold or something and you think your body notices, this stuff shouldn't be in here and tries to get rid of it, your immune system tries to get rid of it. So if the foods you're eating because of leaky gut is getting all these food particles in there, that's foreign particles, your body's immune system is trying to kill all this stuff constantly, and it throws you into autoimmune diseases. Here's an interesting thing. There's 5 adrenal stress effect actions in your body. The first one is the adrenal system disrupts the HPA, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. HPA, simpler axis, okay? And that is a complex network of interactions between the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands that regulate things such as temperature, digestion, immune system, mood, sexuality, and energy usage, in addition to controlling the body's reaction to stress and trauma. Okay? So did any of those symptoms sound familiar to any of you? Okay? So there you go. Adrenal stress reduces conversion of T4 to T3. Okay? So we've talked about that. It creates reverse T3. Adrenal stress also promotes autoimmunity by weakening the immune barriers. We referred to that a little bit with the leaky gut. Okay? And adrenal stress causes thyroid hormone resistance. Okay, in order for thyroid hormone circulating in the blood to have a physiological effect, it must first activate receptors on the cells. Okay, that's what we talked about here. Inflammatory cytokines have been shown to suppress thyroid receptor site sensitivity. Okay, cytokines, it's kind of like they excite the receptor sites, and it makes it kind of inflamed, and so you can't accept. And I think, is this in the handouts we're giving people, or later?
I think so.
Later, okay. And adrenal stress, the 5th one, adrenal stress causes hormonal imbalances. Cortisol is one of the hormones released by the adrenals during the stress response. Okay, so the more cortisol you have in your system, the more of a problem you have. Prolonged cortisol elevations caused by chronic stress decrease the liver's ability to clear excess estrogens from the blood. And excess estrogen increases the levels of thyroid binding globulin. Okay? That's the proteins. Remember that T4 and T3, when they're created, they have to bind to proteins? Well, this says that it increases the levels of thyroid binding globulin. So that means that the protein is bound and it can't be utilized. T3 and T4 can climb onto it, but it can't be accepted into the cell. So we've got a number of things that can be causing issues here. So let's do a quick summary. Basically, your blood work is fine, and so therefore, so are you. Okay? You could have an autoimmune condition. You could have a hormone receptor problem, which we've shown here, similar to diabetes. Type 2 is a hormone receptor problem. You fix that, people don't need to be on insulin. Okay? Or you can't convert T4 to T3, so you might have a liver issue. Okay? And reverse T3 dominance, chemical, emotional, or physical stress can shunt T4's conversion to RT3, which blocks the T3's, the active T3's receptor sites on the cells. So there's a number of issues that can be taking place. And yet when you go the typical route with testing and blood work, all they're looking is to see whether there's gas in the car. If there's gas in the car, they tell you you're fine. When you obviously know, I'm not fine. I'm not fine. So yeah, so you can't use TSH to determine thyroid function anyway. The studies don't even show that that's a thing, and yet that's the gold standard. That's the only thing they look at. So, what we need to do, remember, we need to find the cause. So what's the cause? What are we going to do about this? Well, there's 2 steps in one cause that needs to be addressed in order to get well. Okay, the first step is to remove the cause, which is cellular inflammation. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. You need to remove the cellular inflammation. And the second thing is that you need to fix the cell so that you can get well. Okay? Consider a bicycle wheel. You all know what a bicycle wheel looks like. You've got a hub, you've got spokes, and then you've got the wheel that sits out around it. Think of the spokes, if you will, as a symptom. It could be a headache, or it could be a neck pain, it could be a stomach ache, anything. Or it could represent an actual diagnosis or disease process like diabetes or thyroid or attention deficit, autistic spectrum, any of those things. And what you do with going to any kind of a doctor, even in the natural world, if you will, is that they play with the spokes. And they try to do something, manipulate the spokes to help you to feel better. Okay? Nobody's addressing the hub. The hub is where all the spokes come off. The hub, and what we're talking about today, is the cell. If you don't fix the cell, then it doesn't matter what you do with the spokes. We have to fix the cell first, and then we might still need to deal with the spokes, but you can't do it backwards. You're never going to find an answer. You're never going to get well. Okay? So, what are we talking about? And how important is this? Well, this was Time Magazine. This was 10 years ago, 2004, and they came out. When inflammation becomes chronic rather than transitory, the body turns on itself with after effects that seem to underlie a wide variety of diseases. Now, we're not talking about inflammation like you fall down and buff up your knee or bang your shoulder into the door jamb, okay, and it swells up and gets inflamed. We're not talking about that. We're talking about cellular inflammation, okay? This was probably about 4 years ago in the New Science of Health. Inflammation seems to underlie not just senescence, which is deterioration with age, but all of the chronic illness that often come along with it. Diabetes, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's, heart attacks, cognitive function decline, premature aging, and even cancer to an extent. And they're finding more and more and more. Okay, so how do you find out if you have cellular inflammation? Anybody like to find out whether you have cellular inflammation? Okay, we do a test in our office. It's called the meta-oxy, and it can tell us whether you have damaged and inflamed cells or not. Okay? The bottom line, important thing that you need to understand here is to figure out how to work this thing, is at the bottom here, it's 50 times more accurate than any kind of blood testing to determine if you're aging prematurely, to determine whether you have cellular inflammation. 50 times more accurate. What's a test like that worth? $1,000? $2,000? What do you pay for testing? What's a test like that worth? So, what are the causes of cellular inflammation? Well, there's basically 3 causes. These are important. We've got toxins, bad fats, and sugars. Most of the sugars in the foods. So let's talk first about the bad fats. Bad fats cause cellular inflammation leading to thyroid dysfunction. Well, if that's true, maybe we need to find out what kind of fats you're eating. How many people cook and eat lots with vegetable oils? Most people, okay, because that's what we're told. That's the healthy thing. Because we've been told, eat fats and you'll get fat. Isn't that the standard message? Eat fats, you'll get fat. So you don't want to eat fats. But I'm telling you that the majority of everything you hear, if you just do the opposite, if you do the opposite of everything you've been told, you're going to do better. That's a general statement, but quite often it's accurate. So we've been told that saturated fats are bad. Okay? Things like animal fats, things like butter, okay? I'm here to tell you that that's exactly what you need to eat. Get real live butter. Eat animal fats. Those are saturated fats. Those are the good fats. Now, why are the good fat? Well, here we go. Vegetable oils, they actually turn rancid in the processing. So by the time you get the bottle, you've got rancid oil that you're cooking with, that you're eating, that you're putting in your salads and so forth. And guess what? They decrease thyroid function by causing cellular inflammation. Here's a study, and many others, that shows that diets high in saturated fats, remember this is what we're told are bad, saturated fats, and low in carbs improved weight loss by improving thyroid function. So if you have a weight loss problem and you want to fix it a little bit, start eating good fats, start getting butter. Here's an interesting concept. Generally, we are told that milk's good for you, right? Pretty much. And cheese is good for us, right? And butter's bad for us. What's the difference? It all came out of a cow, right? So take a slab of butter and eat it like some cheese. It's going to be better for you. Okay, a study looked at tolerance to cold compared to diets high in protein, carbs, and fat. Protein, carbs, and fat. And what they found is that people who increased their fat consumption, that was the only thing that improved the tolerance to cold. Okay? So, let's go back here and look at the fats and come back to the cell. So what happens? When you eat good fats, I like to refer to them as God fats, things that God gave us. Okay, fats like avocados. How many people like avocado? Okay, good. We'll keep eating those, okay? Things like butter, okay? Olive oil, same thing. Those are good fats, okay? Anybody else have an idea of a good fat?
Coconut oil.
Coconut oil. Excellent. So these are all good fats. When you take and eat good fats, they're attracted to the cell membrane, and they actually make and they build a nice, strong, healthy fat membrane that's very receptive to taking things in. It builds the receptor sites stronger. I mean, it just builds a healthy cell. When you eat the bad fats, all the fats that we've been told for the last 60 or more years that are good for us, when we eat those, which are really bad fats, those fats are also attracted to the cell membrane. The problem is the cell membrane rejects it. It will not let it in to help build this good, healthy cell membrane. What they do, though, is that they just attach themselves to the membrane. And in the process of that, it kills the receptor sites, it blunts them, it diminishes them, and so now we have fewer and fewer receptor sites on the cell membrane. Okay? Does that make sense? So, let's go ahead and continue on. Fat reprograms your genetic code. Okay? Bad, bad, bad. So let's go ahead and talk about sugars. Grains and sugar. Now, we've all heard grains are good, right? Eat grains? Okay. Well, we'll see. Okay? We're talking about sugar here. Elevated glucose and insulin levels stimulated by the consumption of grains and sugar interferes with the liver's ability to convert T4 to T3. So it says grains and sugar. Why grains? Well, let's deal first with sugar. Okay? If you eat sugar, sugar comes up to these receptor sites and it sits on a receptor site that's going to accept sugar in because the cell needs sugar. Okay? But what happens is that it needs insulin in order to get into the cell. So here comes the sugar, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 sugar, 1 insulin. So here comes a sugar and an insulin, boom, and it goes in just fine. Now what happens if you're just getting sugar, 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 sugar? You've got way more sugar than you have insulin. So all these sugars now start coming up here, and it clogs up the receptor to the point that even if we could get enough insulin, guess what? We can't get it in because it's all clogged up. How many people have gone into a hotel and there's an elevator and everybody's trying to get out of the elevator or get into the elevator at the same time. How well does that work? You got to back up and say, okay, who's going to go first? And you go in one or maybe two at a time. Same thing. It totally shuts this down. Totally shuts this down. So now what the grains, because grains produce glucose. That's the kind of sugar we're talking about. So really, I should put a G up here for glucose, because that's the thing. How many people like breads, pastas, eat oatmeal for breakfast? Because that's a healthy thing to eat, right? Well, maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Multiple studies show that high-carb diets exacerbate thyroiditis and low-carb diets improve it. So what are you going to do when you leave here today if you have thyroid issues? You're going to start eating good fats, and you're going to stop eating grains and eliminate all sugar. And the majority of sugar, and I'm not talking about adding sugar to things, I'm talking about the sugar that breaks down because the bread's are cheap, the pasta's are cheap, all that breaks down into glucose. The only thing the brain and body sees is that's sugar, okay, and it blocks up these ports. Grains are one of the #1 foods that people are intolerant to, which drives autoimmune. So what are we talking about with autoimmune? How many people do you know that are gluten insensitive? Maybe you, or have celiac disease. Okay, it's on and on. I mean, when I was a kid, like, what the heck are you talking about? Nobody had that stuff. You look around now, like half the kids have this stuff. Okay? There's a reason. There's a reason why. So grains raise blood sugar more than sugar. Whoa. More than sugar? And therefore interferes more with the conversion of T4 to T3 than regular sugar. How many people like soda? Okay, thank you for being honest. Okay, I know everybody does. There's only one, actually 2 people actually raised their hand. So, and what are you told? Soda's bad. I'm not going to contradict that. It is bad. Okay? And so what do people do that like soda, because they know sugar's bad? What do you drink? Diet soda. So how many like diet soda? Okay? The thing that makes diet soda sweet are neurotoxins. It causes more damage than the sugar does. And not only that, it causes you to gain weight. So everybody run around drinking diet anything. Diet anything. People with diabetes, they have to take all this diet stuff. Well, they're killing themselves. They're killing themselves. So let's take a look and see. And maybe you might say eating healthy grains would help. Well, whole grains even raise glucose as much or more than pure sugar. 2 slices of whole wheat toast increase your blood sugar more than 5 to 6 teaspoons of pure sugar. So you eat 2 pieces of toast, you might as well take 6 teaspoons of sugar.
Whole grains also can block iron absorption in the system.
Absolutely. It goes on and on and on. So that's the same as drinking a whole can of soda. 2 pieces of toast is the same as drinking a whole can of soda. Check this out. The thing that's important, the most important in this graph, is right here. It's 1 hour after you consume these things. 12-ounce can of Pepsi, because we're here in the South, we need to push some buttons because this is Coke. This is Coke area, okay? Pepsi just doesn't work here in Georgia. So anyway, your blood sugar is at 156. Have oatmeal because that's good with some milk. It's 163. Whole wheat bread, 141. And if you put some milk with that whole wheat bread, it raises to 173. The blood glucose at the end of an hour. And you can see over here, at the end of 2 hours, it's still pretty high. So there's no difference between eating good grains and a can of soda. Interesting, isn't it? And here's another thing. There's so much of our food, a lot in the grains, is genetically modified. Does everybody know what GMO is, genetically modified organisms? It's where they mess with the DNA, okay, in the grains. It started years ago with Monsanto, a chemical company, a drug company, and they came out with something called Roundup. How many people have ever used Roundup? Yeah. It kills things. I mean, wow, what a great discovery, huh? Well, the thing is that they couldn't use it on the foods that we ate, okay? So how are they going to sell it? They can't just sell it around in yards and stuff. So what they did was that they genetically modified, it started with soybeans. They genetically modified the soybeans so that they could tolerate the glyphosate, which is the main ingredient in Roundup. And so what they do is that they plant these rows. If you've ever been out to the Midwest and look at a soybean field, I mean, there's rows and rows and rows and rows of beautifully manicured green soybean plants. And there's not a single weed in there. I mean, it looks just like my garden, right? Just like yours. Well, what's happened is that they just spray this stuff constantly with Roundup, and it kills all the weeds, it kills everything except the soybean. And you might think that's a good thing, but what does the soybean do? It sucks up the nutrients out of the soil. Guess what else it's sucking up out of the soil? The Roundup. And the Roundup is going up into the plant, and so by the time you get anything that has soy in it, guess what you've got? You got Roundup. You got Roundup, which is a toxic chemical. I mean, if you took a spoonful of Roundup and ate it, what do you think is going to happen? It might kill you. Probably end up in the emergency room. I'm going to suggest it's not going to be good. And yet we do that on a constant, daily basis with everything we read. So I think, obviously, that the genetically modified organisms and that whole thing is the absolute worst thing that we can be doing right now. We're killing ourselves. It's also interesting to note that today's current generation, the children of this generation are not expected to outlive your parents. In other words, your kids are not expected to outlive you because of what we're doing to our food chain and so forth. Here's another thing, corn. Anybody heard of BT corn? Same thing, they actually genetically modified the corn so it produces a pesticide. Now why a pesticide? Well, the bugs aren't going to come on and eat it, okay? So rather than spray pesticides on, we just genetically modify it to produce the pesticide. So what do you think is going to happen when you're eating the BT corn? Okay, now you've got that in your intestinal tract, and guess what happens? Now you're producing pesticides in your gut, okay? Scientists are finding the pesticide-producing DNA in your friendly gut bacteria. Okay, you might be becoming a pesticide factory. Still thinking about eating genetically modified organisms? I don't know how well you can see these pictures here, but these are just cute. They used to be cute little rats, but they have terrible tumors. Just from scientists found that rats exposed to even the smallest amounts developed. Is that any better? Mammary tumors and severe liver and kidney damage as early as 4 months in males, 7 months in females. Most of you probably don't know what thalidomide is, but it was around in, when, Doc, the 50s?
Right.
The kids were being born to mothers that took thalidomide during pregnancy, and they were missing an arm, appendages, legs. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible thing. They finally decided, you know, this probably isn't good. I'm wondering when we're going to wake up and decide that genetically modified organisms are also not good. And so sugars aren't good, bad fats aren't good. Okay, and the third thing was toxins. The toxins are probably the worst, okay, the worst offenders. The number one cause of thyroid problems is the toxins. Toxins not only cause inflammation of the cell membrane, interfering with the thyroid receptors, and certain toxins, they can bind to the receptors, blocking the hormone and drive an autoimmune response. So let's take a look at this. When we have toxins, because toxins and fat, it's like a magnet, okay? Fat pulls toxins in. And so here we've got all these toxins embedding themselves into the cell membrane, okay? And what happens when that happens is it causes a lot of inflammation. Now what happens when you cause that inflammation on the cell membrane? Well, a number of things. One is that it blocks the ability of any and all nutrients to get into the cell. It also blocks the ability of anything to get out of the cell. Okay? Does that sound like a good thing? No, it sounds like a bad thing. So here's the deal. How many of you in the wintertime, or maybe the fall or the early spring, like to have a fire in the fireplace and cozy up to it and maybe sit and read a book or something, or maybe drink a beer? but you enjoy being by a fire, right? So what would happen if somebody came and closed the damper, closed the flue?
House would smoke out.
House would be smoked out. And even if we opened all the windows, got all the smoke out of there, how long would it take to really get the smoke out of the house? It's a long time, okay? It doesn't matter what you do. You can use all kinds of chemicals and stuff. It's going to take a long time to get it out. So what do you think is going to happen when you can't get the waste products out of the cell? From the cell doing what it's supposed to do? The cell has two choices. One is it can mutate and change. And what do we know with cells that mutate? Cancer, okay? Absolutely. So it can cause cancer. And the other thing is that it can die. Two choices that the cell has: mutate or die, okay? And so it's not a good choice either one, okay? So we need to fix this. You agree? That needs to be fixed. So the other thing, if nothing can get in, that means the nutrients can't get in, so therefore you can't produce the energy, okay? And here's an interesting thing, is that the cell produces something called glutathione. Has anybody ever heard of glutathione? Okay. So glutathione, well, you've all heard of antioxidants, right? Okay. And antioxidants are you're supposed to take because if you have a lot of oxidation in the cell, okay, you start to age. You start to get wrinkles on your face. Your cells start to die and you just start to age. Okay? And so we're told, well, eat lots of antioxidants. Well, glutathione, GSH, I'm going to put this here. That's how you label that. But glutathione is the strongest antioxidant known in the entire world. Okay, it's 5,000 times stronger than vitamin C, vitamin E, anything that you think is a powerful antioxidant. You're taking these things. It's kind of like trying to sip out of a fire hydrant. Okay? That's what you're going to do. So the most powerful thing, the antioxidants, so you want to be young, you want to be healthy, you want to not look aged, you know, you've got to be able to get the nutrients in. And here's the thing, glutathione is not cheap, if you will. It's not expensive to make, or it is expensive to make, because it takes 3 ATPs to make 1 glutathione. So, energy is what everything in the body works. So if you're in a survival mode and you're trying to just keep going, you know, the energy that your body produces is just producing to keep you going. It's not doing anything to help you to be healthy. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on here. Studies have confirmed certain toxins are the main culprits. We refer to these as the toxic top 5, thyroid toxic top 5. So what are these? The PCBs and dioxins, mostly from contaminated fish. We're going to talk about all these in a little bit more detail. We've got pesticides, we've got heavy metals, we've got BPA, which is in plastics, cosmetics, dental sealants, and we have halogens, or also known as goitrogens. So the first one, PCBs. And dioxin, they're found in all of these kind of like what would be considered good healthy foods, mostly in non-organic meat and dairy. Okay, why do we find it in non-organic? Because we've got all these chemicals that are being sprayed, pesticides, herbicides, and so forth. So we need to make sure we buy organic and not eat this stuff. Also, studies show that toxins induce thyroid hormone metabolism by altering an enzyme in the liver that metabolizes the hormones. Remember, we need to change T4 to T3, okay, to free T3 in the liver. Well, this stuff interferes with that. They also directly attack the thyroid gland itself and the protein that carries the hormone. So what happens if the protein that's carrying all this stuff is destroyed? We have major problems. Second thing, pesticides. Well, here's an interesting thing. Anybody know somebody who goes and sprays lawns and bugs and that kind of stuff? Well, numerous studies link pesticides to thyroid disease. And here's the thing, is that women who are married to men who use pesticides in their work have almost a twofold increase in thyroid disease.
They probably wash their clothes.
Yeah, they get their clothes, they got all this stuff, they wash it. So how many people do you know that are married to somebody like this? The spouse either needs to get a new job or need to get a new spouse. I'm not suggesting anything. Heavy metals, okay, heavy metals is huge. The heavy metals with a strong link to thyroid disease are cadmium, mercury, and lead, okay? Mercury has been shown to bind to the hormone receptors because of its affinity for selenium, which is thyroid receptors and selenium receptors, okay? In studies, mercury has been shown to deplete selenium, which affects the receptor and can trigger an autoimmune response. Studies indicate that the more amalgam fillings present in your mouth, the more mercury you will have in your organs, including the brain, kidneys, heart, and liver. How many people have silver in their mouth? Metal amalgams? I mentioned in the beginning that if I knew then what I know now, I'd be able to help my mom. She had a mouth full of dental amalgams, the silver things. She was constantly leaching mercury into her system. I don't know if it was a dentist or what happened, but anyway, for some reason, the next time she had to have something done, she had a gold filling put in. The reaction of the gold and the silver amalgams created a galvanic current which constantly was hitting her tongue, constantly flowing through her tongue. That's what caused her cancer. If we'd known that then, we would have gotten that stuff out. And we would have been able to help her. So I have answers to things that I never did before. I can help people in so many ways that I never could before. Now,
My son right now is in the process of having all of his fillings removed.
okay, excellent. Now, in the process of doing that, don't any of you run out and start doing that, okay? You've got to go to a biological dentist that knows what they're doing, okay? Because if they don't know what they're doing, a dear friend of mine realized probably 10 years ago that this isn't good. So he went to a dentist, he only had two, had them drilled out of his mouth, and I don't know, 4 to 6 months later, something like that, he started to have health issues. I mean, he got so bad, he almost died because of what happened with the mercury toxicity when he drilled those fillings out, okay? So if you have amalgams in, you want to get rid of them, ask me. We can get you hooked up with a dentist that can probably help you. And here's the thing, this is interesting. Don't insult our intelligence. In 1988, scrap dental amalgam material was declared a hazardous waste by the EPA. And when does the government ever declare anything a hazardous waste? It's hard to get them to do something like that. But the evidence was so overwhelming they had to. They were forced to declare it, and OSHA has certain mandates present to handle amalgam. The bottom line is that scrap metal amalgam must be stored in an unbreakable, tight-sealed container away from heat. Use a no-touch technique for handling the amalgam, and store under liquid, preferably glycerin or photographic fixer solution. Okay? So let me get this straight. They tell you that it's a hazardous material when it comes into the dental office. They take it out, put it in your mouth, and now all of a sudden it's safe. But when you have it taken out, it's hazardous again. I mean, it must be government thinking. I've never seen government thinking that does anything functional. So, Here's some symptoms of mercury toxicity. So look at that. Does any of that sound familiar to you? Okay? Depression, mild fatigue, anxiety, forgetfulness, eyelid, face, or muscle twitching, digestive issues, constipation and or diarrhea, frequent bad breath, constant body odor, dizziness, irritability, sensitivity to sound, and it gets on and on and on, cold intolerance. Does any of that sound like you? How many say, well, it all sounds like me? Okay? You think maybe we might be on to why you have all these things? Absolutely. Lead is another thing. Lead toxicity is a widespread problem. What's the number one source of lead poisoning? Mom. Not my mom. My mom is the sweetest mom I know, you know? Well, how does that happen? Well, during pregnancy, the hormones in pregnancy actually suck the lead out of the bones that are stored in mom because of whatever, and it gets into the baby. So the kids are being born with lead toxicity today, and guess what happens? That can cause brain or nerve damage. It can cause digestive problems, hearing problems. Also, it can stunt your growth just from lead. Here's one of the tests that we do to get proper heavy metal testing. So we look to see what's going on with mercury, what's going on with the lead, what's going on with all these things. Again, moving on to number 4, BPA. Okay, what's that? Well, it's mostly from plastics and cosmetics. How many women use, or do you know, like cosmetics? Because it makes you look beautiful, right? Here's a scary thought. The average American female in this country absorbs on an annual basis 5 pounds of toxic chemicals. On an annual basis from the makeup that she uses. Okay? And that causes cellular damage, which causes increased aging. So the more they put on their face to keep looking younger, the older they keep looking. That's interesting. Studies indicate that even at low doses consistent with what the average person would be exposed to, there are links to changes in thyroid hormones. And then we have halogens and goitrogens. Fluoride, bromine, and chlorine are known as goitrogens because they can cause an enlargement of the thyroid gland. So how many of you drink fluoride on a regular basis? How many drink water? It's in the water supply. Okay, unless you're doing something to specifically get the fluoride out. There's fluoride in the water. Bromine and chlorine. Okay, chlorine, you probably don't go into a pool and drink chlorine and drink pool water on a regular basis, but bromine is in the breads. Okay, iodine. How many people know that iodine is a good thing to have for the liver or proper thyroid function? You've heard that, yeah. Well, guess what? They started taking iodine out of bread and they replaced the iodine with bromine. And so all the time when you're eating bread and so forth, all these grains, you're getting bromine instead of iodine. The problem with that is that iodine is in the same family as fluoride, bromine, and chlorine, and what happens is that they compete for the iodine. We're iodine deficient, we've got all this kind of stuff. Even if we were to start getting iodine in, guess what's going to happen? You got more of these guys than you got the iodine, which is competing with the receptor site, so you're not going to get the functional thing that you need. Yeah, it competes with the thyroid. Fluoride and chlorine are in the water supply. So, yeah, it'd be nice if we can fix the county water supply so they're not putting it in. Does anybody work in a water plant? Okay. Have you ever seen the barrels that the fluoride comes in? Does it have any kind of wording on it or pictures? Like a skull and crossbones or anything? It's a poison, it's a toxic poison, and they're dumping that on the water supply. Because they say it's healthy, okay? Yeah, bromine was replaced in the 1980s. Took out iodine. Oh, and it's also in Mountain Dew and Gatorade. Everybody thinks, oh, Gatorade's good. It's not soda. Gatorade is terrible. Also found in pesticides, flame retardants, electrical equipment, and fabrics. The bottom line is you must minimize these things. You need to get these things out of your environment. So are you toxic? Another test that we do is called the visual contrast sensitivity test. So we can actually see whether you have toxic effects, okay, and illness. It's the best tool. No doctors do this test. They don't do this. It measures, the big words, hypoperfusion of the optic nerve, meaning if the optic nerve is swollen, which means it can't get proper oxygen, neurotoxins decrease the oxygen in the nerve, and therefore the function of the nerve. Okay, so we can do this test. It's not a visual test. In other words, it's like I can read this, I've got 20, 20, 20, 30 vision. It's a contrast test. It's totally different. Here's an example of what one looks like. And you can see this person here, it should be all in the shaded area, and you can see this person fail the test miserably. Now when I say fail the test, it's not like you fail a school test. It means that your body's toxic. So we can identify whether your body's toxic or not. Here's an example of somebody who's been treated that has good. You can see it's tremendously better on that. So, how many people would like to have that test done to see if you're toxic? So if you're looking for the cause of hypothyroid, you need for these additional tests, or the need for these additional tests is determined at your evaluation, okay? So one of the things when we evaluate people initially is to determine whether you need additional evaluations, okay? See if you need a serum selenium, free T3, free T4, TSH, reverse T3. It's important to evaluate if stress is an underlying cause, okay? And the heavy metal testing, which I showed you. So one of the things, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you're looking for the solution in the wrong place, how long is it going to take you to find it?
Forever.
Take you forever. Okay, you'll never find it because you're looking in the wrong place. So if you want to find it, you need to look in the right place. Okay? That's what we do, is that we go through a whole process of that. So if you're not doing the required testing, how are you ever going to find what the problem is? And if you don't know what that is, how can you address the problem accurately and appropriately? You can't do that. So, one of the things is, again, I'm committed, my team is committed, we are all committed to helping you to change your life. The only question that remains is, are you? Are you committed to making a change, to doing what's necessary? How many of you are 3%ers? Okay? So for the 3%ers, I want you to take the form that you have, the very back page. There's a sheet that says that you can come in and have, yes, that one, thank you, that says that you can come in, you get an hour in-depth evaluation with me, along with a number of tests, not just one test that's going to cost a couple $1,000s. It's $497. Okay? But what I want you to do right now, if you're a 3%er, just cross through that $497 and write $397. So for those of you who are 3%ers, you can go ahead and get up right now and go back and see Amy or Sheila in the back, and they can make an appointment for you. Now, we have, I think, just a couple slots this week available. We're very busy, but next week we have maybe a small handful of additional appointments, and then it'll have to be, a couple, 3 weeks down the road before we can fit anybody in. So feel free to go right back whenever and make your appointment with Amy and or Sheila. And again, let me say this, probably you're hearing these little voices. The 97% is saying, they're telling you all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't do this, why you shouldn't act right now, why you should stay the 97%. Why don't we do this? Everybody just stop what you're doing right now and close your eyes for me. Just go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to take a really nice, deep breath and let it all out. And then I want you to imagine that you heard all this great information today. And you leave here today and you don't take action. You're not a 3%er. And I want you to visualize in your mind's eye a year down the road from now. Are things going to be any different? They're probably going to be worse. I want you to go 5 years down the road and imagine what things are going to be like for you at that point in time. Almost certainly we can know that it's going to be worse. You're not going to be better. How are you in control of your life? Maybe visualize yourself naked in front of a full-length mirror. Do you look any different? Have you gained weight? All of these things probably are not what you'd like to do, what you'd like to go to. So I want you to go ahead and open your eyes. And I'm going to suggest that's not where you want to be 5 years from now. Now go ahead one more time. Let's close our eyes. Take another deep breath. Just relax. But this time, I want you to see yourself as a 3%er. That you took action. You made a choice to make a difference. And a year from now, you're feeling better than you have in a long time. 5 years from now, you're kind of wondering how you ever felt. You can't remember how you felt today because you feel so much better. You have your life back. You have your family back. You have your energy back. You're excited about life. So in just a minute, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, and when you do open your eyes, I want you to say as loud as you can with me, enough is enough, I choose to be a 3%er. So in a minute when I ask you to open your eyes, I want you to say as loud as you can, enough is enough, I choose to be a 3%er. Okay, open your eyes and say, enough is enough, I choose to be a 3%er. I hope and pray that you all are. If you're ready to take that step, Sheila and Amy can go ahead and set you up for an appointment. One of the things that people have is questions. You know, one of the things that the 97% keeps trying to pull you away from being a 3%er are the questions. And those questions, we've got basically 5 questions that most common that people have. So let me just go through those real quick for you. The first question is, does my insurance cover this kind of work? And I'll ask you, what do you think? No, insurance doesn't cover anything to get you well, okay? The second question that a lot of people have is that if we find something, what's what's the next step? How long is it going to take? And most people respond really, really well in a range anywhere from 4 to 8 months. Some people a little longer, some people a little bit less. Okay? The other question people have is, well, how many times do I have to see you to go through this process? And it's anywhere from as often as every 2 weeks up to every 6 weeks. It just depends on what you're doing, how you're responding. Okay? And of course, the big question is, well, if my insurance isn't going to pay, how much is it going to cost me? And while I can't tell you specifically what it's going to be for you until we do some tests and so forth, I do know that depending on your financial abilities and so forth, that most people can get through the program with $150 to $250 a month. Okay? And then another question that people quite often have is, well, you know, can I sign up my spouse, or can I sign up my loved one, or somebody who's not here? And the answer to that is yes, you can. It's as long as you make the appointment for them today and pay for them today. That would be the $397. So if you don't think you're a 3%er and you walk out of here and call up tonight or next week sometime and say, you know, that made a lot of sense, I really want to do this, the price is $497. I'm giving you a special opportunity right now to show yourself that you're a 3%er. That you can go and accept the fact that what I've been doing hasn't worked. I'm going to change things. I want to make things better for myself. So it's an opportunity for you to come in so we can check and see if we can find out what's wrong with you, check and see what we can do to help you, and most importantly, to check and see if we can accept you as a patient. I mentioned earlier we don't accept all patients, so I hope and pray that we can accept you as a patient if you choose to do that. So I would like to leave you with a quote by Tony Robbins. Your destiny is based on the moments of decision. Your destiny is based on moments of decision. Choose now and choose well. Thank you.
I look at your last page.
Oh, I've got mine. Yeah, she didn't write it on herself. Save you from the fun.
Thank you.
Our first, are we talking weekdays? We had our first appointment on Wednesday. Probably in September, we'll be able to do a Saturday. For now, we only have next Monday and Friday. And then the week after is Monday and Wednesday. Is your schedule for the week just
You're not hearing the morning, Monday morning, I know. It's unpredictable, so I'm trying to figure it out. Next Wednesday. Oh, next Wednesday, yeah. Everybody's in the planning, that hopefully will be lovely.
How'd you like that?
Next Wednesday.
Yeah. Morning or afternoon?
Probably afternoon.
We do like a 3:15.
Okay.
If that works.
That way I can tell them I'm not leaving too early.
Yeah. Maybe do that. We'll put you down at 3:15. And how are we doing? Definitely. I mean, you're already on the right track with one thing at a time. We certainly understand. But, you know, for him to know that you are interested and
My spring credit.
even as you see your children that you were okay,
And
and
then
going
going
in,
on that.
you know, based on
I don't have one.
well, when you had this down, it really just has check and cause, you know, the sale. I'm excited for you guys. You're taking some big steps here. Actual issue. I'm excited about being there and those people. All right. How are you? Wonderful. So, bye, you guys. We'll see you next week. See you Monday. All right. Yeah. I got a number as far as starting any of that, or just, that's gonna be a great question for, is what related to here. So did you feel like, you know, you've learned a lot of specific for you right now, as far as the toxins and that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I continually learn all about that. I know. Let me go grab Dr. Moore. Would you mind spending a few minutes with her? All right, hang on a second, y'all. I'll score. Anything that
See how sad that is?
What's your zip code? Oh, is it a
3091.
Oh, it's a drain?
Yeah.
And the only way to tell is this is what I do keep for everywhere I go. If I drink or I eat anything, I leave it on drain. Or something that I can't pronounce,
than in
Zero,
the
zero, four?
So I have no idea if I'm covered diabetes, but everything I do, drinks, it doesn't matter, it's organic.
We don't
Do you
change
have
that,
it with you?
you stay with what you're on. And,
So it's not a supplement?
Because again, you're gonna see how they're really doing what
It's being a pain in the butt.
It is.
It's probably telling you your card number is way too low. You couldn't possibly have a card that long.
But it's, we're gonna get to you read over, it's just a lot of information on thyroid. We have a neurotoxic questionnaire. Any other questions? We would, a lot of these. Probably gonna be at least enjoy that. We're about to find out the ask questions of, can't we do that, like this home tree with, pleasure. But if they take it to just, take a lot of time, fill that out, as possible. And then if you could also do 3 days by recall for us. You can start it tomorrow, whatever, just right now your breakfast, the snacks next up, lunch, dinner. Well, 3 days.
This
So
is,
whatever.
none of them are like
That, the other ingredients, nutritional, which is that artificial, allows just to let you know that makes them diet. We're not, medical doctors, so we can order some, call before, so see more stuff.
well, I hate to hear that, but I am
That's, well, yeah, but there's different camp or arthritis. Again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this just because of that.
Appreciate it, thanks, you too.
A lot of times
I was
they
expecting her
do
today.
good vitamins and nutrients, and what they're unfortunately wrapped into something that is.
either one,
So that's
which
why
works for you
I'll
guys.
look it down for you, watch where the vitamin came from. everything else.
That was a new one for me, actually.
Perfect.
So you put it.
Have a good weekend. All right.
See you guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks for coming. Bye, Sonia.
Bye.
So yes, Sonia will go on to Amy.
Okay. But, so basically, availability is open, if you wanted to make a grade as to what was better, yes. Fill that. So we do have, again, like you said, we get so much sweetness, and so hidden sugars in our
Things
foods.
breaks down ash
Which
sugar.
either do, bread and things or probably around where your sugar is at, next thing you know, it kind of is. Doesn't work for you, so, but yeah, so you wanna, if you want my opinion, should I drink a regular Coke or a Diet Coke, I'd say, if you have to drink Coke, drink a regular Coke. But again, which is worse.
All right, so Donna, name is
Usually something like that, you wouldn't have sugar or that stuff.
So,
It has pops, and I think they better take that for sugar.
let me go ahead and write down your
These are just things that you're taking for.
phone number for you.
Yeah, I'm doing it the Biggest Loser up in Jasper at the fitness gym, and this is stuff they recommend.
Right.
All right, and now we get paying with a credit card today?
Yeah, so what,
Let's see if I can get
so what this has is basically
All right, so it's gonna be $397 today.
some herbs in it.
I don't want it for thyroid, I haven't really taken that because
Okay.
I take separate since I don't have no thyroid, that's what my cancer doctor had me on.
So they did surgery and then put you on,
I've been on it for 12 years now.
how are your, how are your levels with this? I mean, they obviously check your blood.
They had, he hasn't been taking off, I go to him next month
Okay.
because I've just been in this program since April, I think it is.
Okay,
So
just
as far
want
as-
to collect your finger on
He
it,
hasn't
give me a
seen
little
me
bit of
since I started
signature.
this program.
Very nice.
So, this has got.
Yet again.
This has got some good stuff in it.
You know that card is for sure what
It does make sense. That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, I can't honestly say that when there's an absent, I would say, oh.
I have, but,
I'd be concerned with.
It's younger, I can run it through another way.
How helpful it actually
Do
is
you know how
for
to use
you.
them?
No, I'm just gonna go through it anyway.
Yeah.
I can just, you wanna try it again, or do you want?
But I would, you know, anything that's.
We're just gonna,
got those artificial.
write your card information down here for this part. And manually add it into the computer.
Okay, I'll let you take
And if you
that.
want, I can email you the receipt. Does that work for you?
Mix that you threw out.
I'll give you the.
That, I mean, that hits home.
I'll deal with that.
Okay. Shouldn't be a problem. Yeah, I was watching,
Yeah, I remember
I
Harvard
for a little bit.
Did you get this from like GNC
Tentative
store?
would be good.
She was going
That's
to
their own
we're
deal.
gonna be getting you her.
You get the
how much
stuff
we got
that's
out of
kind
it.
of
I
like
have
here.
just a little bit more information on thyroid.
Yeah,
Think
what-
about
that's what
what
it is.
cancer your spouse, what we're talking about.
Yeah,
But we're gonna be going over with you here. Here's my, here's what you come back about, you have a neurotoxin.
Don't make me answer that.
So I would appreciate if you take, at least for the last 2 hours, you have really, go in depth. It's gonna ask like anxiety, where you see this, that you're taking on some different, health issues you have in your past. So, like I said, very simple, so take your time to really, fill out, and we're gonna get you ready for your medication. It's also gonna ask you for a FDA diet recall, and so you can start this tomorrow, whenever you want to, go ahead and write down, these nutrients, the breakfast, snack, lunch, dinner, and your cell walls, kind of be specific. Those nutrients.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna wanna know that too.
But if you're toxic, because of, does that make sense? So, spending a lot more money and not really
I told her to take this stuff to GNC and have them compare it to what they got and see, and look at it and just kind of compare it with their stuff.
The only problem I have is
And then the fortune is after is specific doctor vitamins that go out. The additional concern would be by the shower. I'm gonna tell you all kinds of things that they have, obviously, but we are gonna be going over some vitamins and minerals that very also what additional they're gonna lean towards that. There's like a few like little, I mean, to me, want to sign this right away, these good things in it. But, yeah, if you can find out ready for you.
I went to the nutrition store the other day,
A little bit more information.
and I was looking at the stuff at the nutrition store
Like for one,
before I remembered from
we'll
this.
be talking about,
And
the lifestyle.
what I'm seeing on the price, you can almost cut half what you're spending going to the nutrition store versus buying this stuff. So this stuff is extremely expensive.
Typically, you, just like I'm buying your food. Organic food is more expensive than GMO.
Right, so August 8th, I'm going to do
Now,
about
we
10:30,
have
right?
to do, we're looking at our budget and saying, well, I can get corn on the cob GMO, I'll just do that. And then you're looking at organic and you're paying,
I'll email you,
but you're getting better quality. So, I can't argue.
Safe drive home and a good rest of your weekend.
Nice to meet you, Dawn. We'll be seeing you soon, I
A
guess.
simple example, you got a Ferrari in your garage, are you gonna just cheap
I
regular
think you want
gas?
that.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to figure out really.
Different information.
Well, that's just also expensive, and just looking at different ingredients and stuff. I might have a reliable comparison to something to see if that's worth what it's costing, or if they something that's about better than that natural.
The problem with, unless I see more information than the label.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you find out what's causing the problem, remove the source of that cause. Anybody's gonna get
That
wrong.
makes a big
And
difference.
that's really what we do.
If you look, you take vitamin C, for instance.
Yeah, I'll see you
there's so
Friday.
many
Thank you.
different
See you Friday.
types of
Have a good week.
vitamin C, and
Thank you
Thank
for being
the
back.
best thing
Okay.
you can do is get vitamin C out of the food that I gave you, okay? That's the better quality. So, you just have to learn about what you're putting in.
I only,
Okay, we have.
no worry with them, it's all, no, it's all internet, there's no store. It's all.
On this product,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Then don't take it.
Well, you need to know this, because you're gonna take all this stuff.
Yeah, but it's good to have questions, I understand that. But, I mean, I've been involved with you know, products that are sold network marketing. And I do know they're more expensive, but here's the thing. The reason why they're more expensive is because they're paying people a commission to tell others about it, okay? So if you're telling others and you're actually getting money back, then that's gonna balance out the cost of the product. Well, I mean, that's a business thing. You have to tell more people, you know, and some, you know, a lot of times people will blame the network marketing, like, oh, that didn't work. So they think it's a network marketing problem, oh, it's a pyramid scheme, you know, they call it negative things. But the problem is that actually they didn't work it to make it actually do what it's supposed to do. But a lot of times they're good products, you just have to. Oh, sure, yeah, let me show you that.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Hopefully you learned something.
Yes, we
Okay,
did.
good. Now, did I overhear you say you don't have a thyroid?
Yeah, I don't have one.
So obviously you need to take the hormone, you need to take the Thyroid. But if you're still having issues, symptoms.
I've just
like that-
recently been having, like, I go to my cancer doctor next month,
Mhm.
and he's the one who has me on all this, and I'm gonna tell him about my hair loss, because for some reason I've just recently been losing my hair, and I seen the thing on Facebook, I was like, this is Cheryl, like, smiling, you know,
Right.
about it, so.
But see, when you understand, like this, well, I've erased it now, but the cell, if you have cellular inflammation, it shuts everything down. And of course, to the point where the cell can morph, which becomes cancer, mutates, and starts developing cancer. So you don't fix that, and it doesn't matter what drugs you're taking, it doesn't matter what you're doing to fix the cancer. I'm not saying that that's not important to do. What I'm saying is that if you don't fix the cell, all this stuff is like take a pot shot. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Right.
But if you want it to work, you need to fix the cell first. So that's the whole thing. And then, of course, it can be thyroid because of if the fact that your thyroid was removed, probably it was shown to be effective somehow.
I had a tumor on it,
Yeah.
so they removed that side, and then when it came out positive, I had to go back a month later and have the other side removed.
Yeah. So, but see, if you understand the mechanics, you know, putting a T4 in is one thing, but if your body's not converting it and doing all those other things, then you're going to have those symptoms and those problems. So. I'm glad you were all able to make it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And Nick, I appreciate you being here. Hopefully you got some good information.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, have a good day.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Y'all too.
Well, I have to say, I had a hard time starting my talk because you just blew me away. I mean, that was just
I
like
know.
awesome, amazing. It's just like, oh my God. Just
How do you
go back and
how do you
sign
top
up.
that?
I know, just go back and sign up. We're out of here. I can get my Saturday going. And then you too, Sheila. It was just like, oh my God, you know, it was just, I had kind of planned in my head to do that a little earlier in my talk, but then as I got going, because I don't have that all down yet.
Yeah.
And so I forgot, and then I got into the talk later, and I thought, I need to do this or it's not going to happen, so. But it was perfect. I think it was great timing
Good
for that.
testimony.
Yeah.
I just got it.
Very genuine, I'm
I'll
telling
stand in
you.
front of the mirror and say it and say it and say it.
I give you all a big hand. Wow, now we just, what's our date?
We got two
We
people
need to
signed
do
up.
3.
so-
Two people signed up
Yeah.
and paid.
Yeah. Yep, one new patient and then.
I mean,
Sonia.
yeah, it's one new patient.
One new patient?
Yeah, Dawn.
Oh, okay,
Dawn,
yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
Sonia, so.
Yay.
Exciting.
And then, yeah, Dr. Parker, I'm not sure what he's thinking, but he got a lot of good information,
He did.
so I think that he'll,
And it's so great that, you know, again, now, was a medical doctor here, that gives some credibility, but then also, he was the one that, I'm looking for answers for my family, you know, and that was powerful.
yeah, and I heard a little beep. I don't know if this shut off.
Oh, gosh, I forgot it. It's still flashing.
blinking.
Oh.
Nobody turned it.